Breaking news on the widening Trump org criminal investigation. The Manhattan DA has now convened a grand jury to hear evidence and weigh charges against the former president or employees of the Trump organization. At the heart of the matter is the rising heat on the money man, CFO Allen Weisselberg. He's worked with Donald Trump there for decades. Prosecutors putting on serious pressure. Given the import of Mr. Weisselberg and the way the Trump organization works on the inside, we're now joined tonight for a very special interview with Barbara Ress, a former Trump Organization executive vice president. She worked with Donald Trump for over a decade and knows intimately how the organization runs on the inside. For legal perspective, we're also joined by former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade. Welcome to both of you. With two Barbaras, I will use last names religiously. Barbara Ress, does it surprise you that the grand jury has been convened, marking this escalation? And does Weisselberg, in your view, have anything to worry about?
Well, it surprised me because I think I said this once before. Trump has always been total Teflon. So, I mean, you know, that they got getting this close and closing in on him is wonderful and surprising for him. Weisselberg, he must be shaking in his boots. I mean, you know, he's the key man here. And, you know, he's got things at stake besides just, you know, him. He's got his kids and the prospect of going to jail. And it's a big deal for Weisselberg. And Weisselberg is just he's an ordinary guy. I mean, he's not like a Cohen or, you know, anyone that, you know, the big names of Stone or any of those people. He's just an ordinary guy. I mean, you know, he rose up and changed his standing and everything. But I can imagine he's just beside himself.
Yeah, and we have got some images of him on the screen, the man you call an ordinary guy. I want to play some of the other witnesses in this case, including Michael Cohen, who literally kick-started these cases with his very public fallout with the former president and on his testimony, as well as other witnesses last night.
Allen himself admitted to me that his taxes and pay stubs, he said, I'll never show those. Oh, no, he's supposed to be the guarantor on my apartment, my lease, after I was getting divorced. And he said, when I was getting divorced, excuse me. And he said, oh, no, I can't show my taxes. I can't show my pay stubs. And I thought, why not? You know, basically he was saying they're illegal and I'm not releasing them. It was during the Cohen SDNY investigation. Pretty telling.
This family is going to pretend that it all had to do with Allen, and that Allen was in charge of everything, and Allen was responsible, and they're all going to flip against Allen.
They're going to flip on each other like it's going out of style.
Barbara Ress, do you think Weisselberg understands that could happen? Would he be ready for that?
Of course, if he doesn't understand it by this point, he's got a problem. I mean, you know, he's seen Trump throw everyone that he could find under the bus, and he'll do it big time with Allen. Does he have a problem with him? Well, it probably would hurt him, but he'd be foolish not to think that was going to happen. And it is a big problem for him. And everyone else is going to do that, all the kids and everything else. But Weisselberg, for one thing, he's not the kind of guy that would be the only one that would know. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone like that, but it's certainly not Weisselberg. Weisselberg is one of those total sycophants that doesn't breathe or inhale or exhale without Trump's permission or knowledge. So I think that'll be interesting. I'm trying to lay it on Weisselberg and how he responds. And I think it'll be effective. I think that Weisselberg...
Go ahead.
No, I think that Weisselberg will be able to convince them that Trump was part of it and that Trump had, you know, complete guilty knowledge, as it were.
Yeah, and that brings us exactly to Barbara McQuade. If Weisselberg has evidence of that, he certainly would have a somewhat receptive audience in the grand jury room or from these prosecutors, as long as it's factual, as long as he can support it, that he wasn't out going completely rogue to make someone else money, but that, like Mr. Cohen, the things he did, he may have done for the client, for the boss. How would that work, Barbara McQuade?
Well, someone like Allen Weisselberg could be a very valuable witness to prosecutors because of his position as chief financial officer. You know, in a paper case, you quoted those music lines earlier, the beauty of documents is they don't lie. And so the documents themselves can be the best evidence. You don't really need somebody to be the eyewitness who tells you what happened. You can document that. But it can be very useful in a case like this to have someone like an Alan Weisselberg to serve as the narrator, to explain why they were writing one number for insurance companies, for example, and a different number for the IRS. And so there can be a lot of value for a witness like that. I imagine that he is loyal to Donald Trump and that it would take a lot for him to flip. But sometimes when someone is staring at criminal charges against themselves and the likelihood of going to prison, then the idea of cooperating becomes a lot more attractive. We saw it with Michael Cohen, especially if Alan Weisselberg sees that some of his family members may also be exposed to criminal charges. That could be the lever that convinces him to cooperate.
Barbara, your views of what it means to have this grand jury of New Yorkers, of Donald Trump's peers. He famously relocated to Florida, but he's been in New York a very long time, and he's been the president. He's very well known. He's very polarizing. What does it mean under the requirements of justice to get that grand jury to look only at the evidence, although it's a very different structure than a traditional jury, but to get it to look at the evidence and not be swayed one way or the other by any potential political views?
I think it's a very significant step in the investigation. We've known for a long time that Cy Vance has been gathering documents to try to see whether he believed there were any criminal offenses that were committed. But to take this step of convening a grand jury means that he believes that there is at least some factual predication to believe that there is a crime. If the documents led to the conclusion that there was nothing to see there, there would be no need to take this step. But this is the next step now of bringing in witnesses to testify. As you heard Dan talk about earlier, in New York, unlike in federal court, hearsay is not permitted before the grand jury. So you must actually call the firsthand witnesses who observed these things to come in and testify about what they saw, to show them the documents. But there is also the purpose of locking certain people into their stories. So if you want someone like an Alan Weisselberg to cooperate, it's very important that you put him before the grand jury and get him to testify under oath so that he doesn't wiggle out of it later and change his tune.
Right.
So I think it doesn't necessarily mean that charges are coming. The grand jury would have to agree to that. But it means that this is a significant step in advancing that process.
Right. But I'm wondering specifically your view, and I guess I'll spell it out slightly more precisely. What if you have a couple grand jurors who say, well, I love my former president. I don't believe his company could do any wrong?
Well, you only need a majority of the grand jurors to get an indictment, a finding of probable cause. So it's a little different from the standard in a court where you need a unanimous jury. So if there are a couple of people who are outliers who have strong views about this politically, they can't sway the entire grand jury. And so if the evidence is there, they're instructed to look at the evidence, to not consider anything like political factors, to look at it. Of course, we all have all of the implicit biases that we bring with us to every decision. But unlike a trial jury, you can't have one or two outliers that can hang the whole thing.